Doing bombless runs is wrong. The game devs need for you to spin some more.
Yo, Roberto's here to save the day. Y'all to buff those baddies while I stab them away.
That's who you're gonna get for free here in week 4. Alright, okay. It's me. It's WillBits. Things are getting a little hot here in hell. There are a few controversies kind of going on at the same time around the game right now, and before I look too hard at the current event proper, I wanted to break format a little bit and talk about each of these things a little bit here in this video. We've got an exciting thing, a kind of disappointing thing, and then a weird thing that's happened. But before I talk about any of it, right now, if you haven't yet, log in, set your billionaire bot right this instant to do his 18-hour task, order the most expensive item. Go ahead, do that right now, even if you don't have the quest going yet, just get that started. Trust me on this. Now the exciting thing is, at long last, our first villain is here! And it isn't Robot Devil, it's Roberto! As spoiled by my intro, you've probably already heard by now, this week's first free character is the insane red robot from the Robot Asylum, and honestly, outside of Beelzebub himself, Roberto may be the crown jewel of this event so far. Let's bring him on in.
Here's a muggin. Hand over your skin.
Oh, he is glorious to behold. I love that most people are gonna have actually a pretty good shot at getting Roberto. Even if you miss the Robot Devil, and I don't hope people miss him, but you only have to get through about 3.5 weeks of content out of the 5 weeks we have to do it to pick up Roberto, so that seems rather doable. With having a villain right here, the odds of you getting at least one villain class are actually pretty good. That's really exciting. As a villain, it's looking like his special attack is going to be an armor debuff for enemies. To what end or how effective that is, I don't actually know yet. If it just means you'll be able to hit enemies harder, it's effectively identical to a captain buff for math reasons. Whether you're adding to your teammate's attack or removing your enemy's defense is basically the same from a numbers standpoint, unless it also removes resistances, like the ones on the bombable units on the hell maps. Do villains do that? I don't know yet, but stay tuned, because we're gonna find out in this video tonight. Maybe. Unless they change it. So that actually brings us pretty organically to our disappointing thing. Certainly everybody has been reacting very negatively, if you haven't heard yet, the news that with the most recent update, no bomb runs have been effectively nerfed. They're not impossible, but if you're new to the game, have low-level characters, or are already struggling, they've really kind of pulled the chair out from under you with this. Now, basically, Captain and Robot buffs used to be able to stack basically infinitely. You could just keep piling them on, and eventually your characters would be doing insane amounts of damage and just be nigh invulnerable. This wasn't a big deal in most space fights, as generally they're over one way or another before you've had a chance to actually use the special attacks, maybe twice, but it was the core mechanic behind no bomb runs. Since you could keep just stacking robot buffs even on low-level characters, and then basically just AFK away from your phone for about 10 or 20 minutes while you did something else. But now, you can see, after just a couple of times, it basically just says defense maxed, and you no longer get to buff them anymore. So you still have to go through the fight taking at least a little bit of damage. You can kind of heal them with influencers and still kind of do them, so it's not completely ruined as a strategy, but if you don't have level 25 characters, you're not going to be able to do this anymore. Now this Tapping this guy is not a fun way to play the game. Personally, I was in Minnesota for a wedding about 2 weeks ago, and I was running down my phone battery monitoring no-bomb runs while touring museums with my family, and that's not very fun to do for anybody involved. TinyCo seems to have not really wanted us to play the game this way, and I agree, spending a couple of hours or so monitoring a mostly passive grind and just occasionally remembering, oh yeah, I gotta press these buttons, is not a lot of fun to do once, let alone 2 or 3 times a day for a couple of weeks on end. Ugh. Designing events in a way that doesn't happen is definitely preferable, but I do worry that by changing these buffs rather than the mechanic, we've diagnosed the symptoms and not the cause. Yes, the game has a bad cough and a runny nose, but removing the respiratory system isn't how to fix it. People aren't doing no-bomb runs because they love staring at their characters' cute pixel animations, and don't get me wrong, these are pretty cute. But they're running these because the events have 2 competing grinds in a week that sort of only has time for one grind or the other. The initial grind is bomb crafting. It's slow, and you need a lot of bombs before you go in on a run. You need dozens for a lot of these maps, and even if you have the materials, the actual crafting takes hours. Plus, you often can't even start collecting these materials immediately. Often they're gated behind 8-hour quests, or this week, a full 18-hour quest that I had you start earlier before you can really get started on the event proper. That's basically a whole day out of your week gone immediately. It can take 2 or 3 days before you can do a proper run, and if you don't rush through with a no-bomb run or 2, or spend a bunch of pizza somewhere, either on bomb generators or just rushing tasks. And that would be kind of fine if that was the only major hoop we were jumping through this week. 2 or 3 days to get bombs going, then 3 or 4 days to run the maps and get all of the different buildings that you need to create. Is a pretty reasonable pace to clip through for a week of content. If placing the buildings was all you needed to check off some of the character requirements, as many did in the Omicron invasion, I'm looking at you, Statue of Liberty, I think we'd all feel pretty good about it. The problem comes when, in the latter half of the week, those buildings also drop items you need on rather long cooldowns and with a pretty unpredictable frequency. Quarters for Hookerbot were common items, but with a 12-hour cooldown on this building, and they weren't even guaranteed at that rate. Missing twice sets you back an entire 24 hours, and if you happen to place the building down at, say, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, you either have to get up at 3 a.m. and check it again, or just accept that one whiff puts you behind basically an entire day. Adding that on the tail end of the other initial hoops we had to jump through, and the design of the event kind of trends towards leaving you behind the curve by default, unless you either start running the missions immediately without the bombs to get a head start, or you just hit the jackpot and really luck out on your building drops. If you get both, then yeah, you tend to finish a day or 2 early, but if neither occurs, you end up finishing a couple of days later or more. And that's a problem in an event with multiple weeks where finishing late repeatedly can put you further and further behind progression, where the main thing you want is at the very end of a long series of things that we gotta do. I've sent in a bunch of suggestions on how to fix some of these things, and honestly, I'd like to see all of them addressed. But if even 1 or 2 get shaped up, it would give us a lot of breathing room here for the last couple weeks. Maybe even give some folks who are behind a way to catch up. I don't know what kinds of improvements are or aren't coming. Increased bomb capacity would help. Pity timers on the RNG drops. Just decreased timers on buildings in general would be really nice to see. 10 to 12 hours is just a little too long for some of these things. Hey, bags of money! 10 hours though, so if I'd missed that, it'd be that much longer. It's rough. The other thing that could be changing is if the aforementioned villains actually help us blow through the defenses a little bit. That would be pretty huge. We'll look at that in a minute, in just a minute. Oh man, I've already been talking for like like what, like 10 minutes now? I don't know, too long. And I haven't even touched on this week's mechanics, really. And I haven't done the weird thing yet, which is that there was a bug when the week first launched, and as a result, we sort of know what next week's characters are, and I already have one of them, albeit an incredibly buggy version of them. Okay, assuming that we continue to get 3 characters every week, and assuming that one of those is going to be the robot devil, the others are likely to be Pazuzu, the French gargoyle from, like, that one episode. Remember him? He's an obscure reference, but also I love him and I'm excited to potentially pick him up.
Now, bon nuit to you all.
He was in the build menu for the week, although graphically he looked like Blatherbot, but the name was clearly Pazuzu with Notre Dame Cathedral, so that's maybe coming next week. The other character is Father Changstein el-Gamal, the leader of the First Amalgamated Church. He practices every religion at the same time, and apparently doing this has made him bug out the entire game. So just like Pazuzu, he was listed in the character menu, but with a buy option, and he was actually free. So I pressed the button, and surely enough, el-Gamal is, for now, mine. If you actually look in the build menu, you can see him sitting there, rank 1 influencer, with his little item. I'm told that this bug is not going to be kept, and he will be manually deleted sometime tomorrow. So if you also logged into the game early enough to spot this glitch before they removed it, don't put any Nixon bucks or career chips into him, because they might get wasted. He has no tasks right now and is mostly invisible. If you click on him, actually no art shows up at all. Although if you click on somebody else and then come back, he looks like whoever the last person you clicked on was. So he's like a ditto or a doppelganger. It's kinda weird. You can also spot him actually here in the character menu still. But if you click on him, he is still invisible and he has no tasks whatsoever right now. Ooh. But if you want to make it look like you have multiple people in your party, he's good for making doppelganger folks. His combat sprites are in-game though, so you can actually fight with him right now. He works fairly normally. He looks like he does melee attacks, and he has this glorious golden glow about him. I probably shouldn't be using him. I've been warned that this could actually completely crash my game because they haven't fully implemented and testing him yet, so anything could happen. That said, here's a preview of his art. See you next week, maybe. Abort! Abort! Leave! There's a pretty good chance that el-Gamal or Pazuzu, sorry, that's an impulse at this point. There's a pretty good chance one or the other of them might be in a mystery box a la Mr. Peppy, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, enjoy this fleeting glimpse of a character I briefly got for free, but will not get to keep. Goodbye, Changstein el-Gamal. Goodbye. Alright, I haven't done anything pertaining to this week, so I'm gonna skip most of the wacky character cutscenes. I'm sorry. It would go something like this. I'm the robot devil, and I'm laughing at your misfortune. I'm another character, and I'm reacting to all of this. Go! You have a couple of 2-hour tasks when you first start. Do that. You have a task where Gypsy Bot has to do something for 10 hours, and Billionaire Bot has his 10-hour task, which hopefully you started earlier when I told you to. Great! You're like 15 minutes in on that now, so congrats! The next task involves good old Roberto, and you'll need to collect 7 oil and craft 7 bombs. Getting 7 oil may actually be kind of time-consuming. Roberto's building, the Knife's Edge, drops 3 guaranteed every 10 hours, but if that's your only source, it takes you 30 hours to get all 7, and that's after you start this. See what I was saying earlier? 18 hours plus 30 hours is like an entire 48 hours before you even get to think about running the first space map. It's available as soon as you have this one open to you, but without the bombs, that's kind of irrelevant. That's a really long ramp-up time. Our premium for this week, Robot Leela, who again is a premium. I thought she was going to be free since she was on a space map. That's a whole thing. People are rightly pretty mad that a 100% completion on a space map for the first time is gated behind a 130 pizza premium character. It's not great, but she does help out.
Thank you.
Her description, Robot Leela. Apparently we haven't written anything funny about Robot Leela. And hey, she's actually a robot now, so that's something. At least she's not a redundant captain. She can do a task to help you make a little bit more oil every 6 hours. So that does shave potentially 10 hours off of your 7 timer, since it drops 3 at a time otherwise. It makes her a little like Ghost Calculon, except for some reason she can't fight our new mobs, which are these pink robot showgirls. Every other week there's been 1 premium and 1 free fighter to be able to fight the showgirls, or the snakes, or the moths, or the terrorized citizens, or whatever thing it's been. But here, both of our free characters are showing up. Roberto, and then Fender, he's going to be our end-of-week goal. He's a cool robot, and a pun that I think we can all appreciate, so I look forward to picking him up. But it means that you can't get started on Pink Robot Showgirls as a source for oil until you have Roberto. Normally, you were able to buy in on the premium character or costume, and at least have some ability to start in on the characters. It's kind of weird that they've broken with tradition this week. So outside of all that kind of additional ramp-up time we have this week should feel really, really familiar to the last 3 weeks. Grind for bomb mats, make you up some bombs. In that spare time, you should probably at least step into this Hellbound from Downtown level and try a no-bomb run if you have any level 25 plus characters, and if you're feeling a little saucy. If not, I guess use the spare time to just grind the previous missions for cash and chips and try to push a fighting team up a few more levels, as that's kind of where we're stuck until you unlock the bombs or Roberto. But yes, Roberto! Let's check his butt out. All of his drops, once again, come from buildings. His rarest drop, which is only uncommon, is the bayonet that drops from Knife's Edge, the building that you're already getting. So while you're collecting oil, a couple of those should hopefully drop. The sacks of money drop from the Billionaire's Mansion. I already got a couple of those earlier, so hopefully those are relatively easy. Deadly Socks drop from the, yes, we're getting Trump Trapezoid, which has become more relevant than I think it was ever intended to be, so that'll be interesting. And then, of course, knives. Roberto's knife will come from the Time on Your Hands clock store. Trump Trapezoid. And then you can start with Lorenzo's music store, and then a whole bunch of neat floor spikes and other stuff that I guess are going to help us get Fender. I'm not sure what he'll do. We'll look at those later. Not in this video. I assume it's going to be a similar do this stuff mechanic. It'll probably take you a good couple of days to get all of that, so I guess we'll just check in a couple of days. Oh, hey, Roberto! Well, let's check his butt out.
Hope you love being stabbed as much as I love stabbing. Ha ha!
Oh, Roberto, my boy, my baby boy, you are so skinny. Eat, eat. Oh, time to do some stabbing. His max health is 4,127, compared to a captain that would have 3,850. He has 359 attack, which is less than a captain, but 92 defense and 32 speed. So, other than his attack being slightly lower, he's pretty beefy. This map is a pretty hilarious skull and crossbones shape, where you're mostly going to have to go over the head here on the fast path. You'll need Fender, Gypsy Bot, and it looks like Pazuzu in order to get 100% completion on this map. Hopefully he is a free character just because I really want him to be free. Pazuzu! But let's find out what happens. Alright, let's do a debuff. Ha ha!
ha!
Oh. Oh no. It didn't strip her defenses at all. I was really hoping that it was gonna actually strip down all of her defenses and make it possible to no-bomb run this in the normal way. Villains do not strip resistances. You're still gonna have to run this with some variation on fire bombs and oil bombs. That's not great. Well, I hope villains have just a really just immense ability. I'm gonna run it once more to see what happens. I had really hoped that that was gonna be an intended mechanic, because that would be the reason for them nerfing captains back, the reason for them nerfing robots back, because they wanted villains to come in and be better at doing this as a thing. As it is, it looks like influencers are the new robots for if you're trying to do a run without anybody. Let's debuff her again. I bet the buffs are just too high, that this is just really not intended to be the way to do. Whoa, wait a second! Hold on! I have spoken too soon. Did you guys just see that? I didn't think that was going to happen. A second debuff from my monstrous level 30 villain stripped her defenses. Scruff, they just did 470 something damage, I think. You can actually clear this with a villain. It takes a couple of times, but they do seem to work the way captains used to. So if you have two villains, that'll go even faster. Oh, that's the way to do it now. So, okay, that changes things a little bit. I think it's still going to be possible to no-bomb run without Roberto, but Roberto really changes the game up a little bit. All the things that were going on with robots being nerfed seems to have had a game-changing mechanic here. It's taken 2 debuffs, but it did actually debuff it enough that I was able to actually plow through that. I was getting ready to be really disappointed and was trying to plan for what my disappointed speech was going to be. I'm excited that it worked! So that's basically it. That's the whole thing. When the event first launched, captains were able to overcome the buff. If you kept doing a captain buff, you were able to do enough damage to outdo whatever number they had set the defense buff at being. And that's clearly involved in how you're supposed to actually correctly complete this event now. They hadn't anticipated us doing that. So the short-term gap fix, I'm guessing here, was they just dumped a crap ton of defense. They just pressed 9999 on the button like a contradictory German, and just wanted to make sure that there was no way any amount of buffing would ever get over that in a reasonable amount of time. The plot they came up with in the meantime to fix that was to nerf robots and to nerf captains so that they too wouldn't be able to overpass it in a certain period. And then once that limitation was in place, they were able to bring the resistance back to its starting value and then let villains do what they're supposed to be able to do, which seems to be the first thing that does actually overcome a buff or a resistance or whatever you want to call it. I've lost all of my words because I'm off script at this point, because I had guessed that might happen, but I didn't actually think it was going to, because every time we've guessed a character is going to be able to take out a minion type, it ends up not being the case, but it was here! Villains! They may be really event situational, but that's a really strong mechanic, and I'm curious how that's going to come into play in potential future mechanics where there might be resistances and new characters or casual players who didn't have access to these characters won't have access to that. I hope we get to keep using it, because I just put a lot of money into having a villain, and I want to use him! I want him to be cool as something more than just a glorified captain. And that'll do it for now, if resistances are something we're going to keep seeing in the future. That's basically going to be it. Outside of that new thing with the mechanics, I think supposedly the Robot Devil is supposed to show up this week. I'm not gonna cover that in this video because really I just really wanted to fight something with Roberto, and that's just what I wanted to cover. So we've done it! Go and tell it on the mountain! Roberto can stab through shields. That's gonna be it for this episode. Maybe we'll talk about Robot Devil if that's something you guys want to see whenever that starts up. I'm gonna do more research into that later. But for now, that's it for me. See you guys next time! Bye for now.